Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I show you how to put together a beautiful winter pot. So let's go. It is the end of November and I finally have gotten around to putting together some beautiful things to put on my porches. And I started working on this project and I thought, why not take you along to show you what my process is for putting these pots together. A fun thing to do during the late fall, early winter months is to go foraging for different types of materials to put in your winter pots. Now, I could go and I could definitely support my local nursery and buy a lot of the greens, especially if I don't have them on my own property. However, here where I live in New Hampshire, Zone 5B, there are plenty of materials that I can use just by foraging in my own yard as well as other people's yards and put together a beautiful arrangement. I did stop by a few nurseries today. I wanted to look at what their containers looked like, what the prices were. It gets really expensive, especially when you want to have a bunch of different pots or containers. And so I thought, why not just go foraging for my own material and put together something equally as beautiful? Now, on my property, I have a few things that I used for these pots. However, I want to thank my friend Linda. I did go foraging on her property and I got a bunch of material. And I also want to thank my friend Joe. She also had me forage on her property as well. So between 3 different pieces of property, I was able to find some beautiful things. I was going to stop at Michael's and Joanne Fabrics and look for some very pretty ornamental pieces to add to my pots. However, I knew at home I already had some things. And my goal was I wanted to do this project with zero cost to me. I just wanted to use things that I already had. But my goal for next year is I want to gather even more material from places like Joanne Fabrics and Michael's, but I'm going to wait until closer to Christmas, if not after Christmas, when they mark things down. And then I'll have a better idea of what I'm looking for. And also, I'm considering next year doing this type of project with all of my hanging baskets. If you've seen in previous videos, I have hanging baskets that hang on a lot of the trees on my property. And I fill them up in the spring as well as in the summertime. And next year, I want to fill them up with some beautiful greens and have them lining the driveway as well as around on my property. So that's a goal that I've set for myself for next year. So let's go ahead and fill up 2 more pots that I have left. I have one window box over here, and then I also have a large pot over here. We're going to do those together, but you want to wait until the very end because I'm going to show you a close-up of all the pots that I have behind me. And I want you to see how I put them together so that hopefully it inspires you. We're currently working in my garage. Don't mind the mess, but this is my reality. This is my garage, which is a place where I like to work during the winter. And you can see I have a ton of material that I'm working with here. So we're going to start working on a pot, and I'm going to start taking from all of these pieces of material, and I'll show you what I'm grabbing as we put the pots together. So what we have here is just a regular window box, and I'm using used potting mix that I had already in different containers and pots. This time of year, it's perfectly fine to use used potting mix because ultimately these greens just need to be stuck in some sort of material and they will freeze here within a day or two and it will be perfectly fine. The first thing that I did when I put my window boxes together were I put some branches in the center. When you think about it, a lot of our pots and containers have some sort of a filler, a thriller, and a spiller. So in a way, these branches act as the thriller. And I just got them on my own property. They're basically just branches from the bottom of a tree. They're nothing spectacular, but they do have a reddish brown color to them, which I thought is very pretty. So I'm going to check them for the height, and I'm going to use the window box behind me for reference. I'm going to go ahead and cut a little bit of it off because I don't want it to be too tall. And when you're sticking things in your containers, it's good to just have them at a different angles. You don't want everything just straight up. It makes it more interesting. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some greens around it. And when it comes to the greens, what I'm doing is I have a very big branch that I'm working with here, and I'm just cutting off pieces that are small enough so I can stick them. And I'm basically going to stick this type of green in the center here. The key is you're trying to fill this up as much as possible, and you want to basically be layering the greens in here. And notice on the ends, I'm trying to, once again, I'm just trying to put things in a little bit of an angle just to add some interest to the container. If you go to big box stores or a local nursery, they sell a lot of different types of greens. So you can definitely buy from there, and you can also use what you have on your own property and mix and match, which is really nice. So now that I've put a layer in the center here, I'm now going to put a layer of a different type of greens just to add interest around this side here as well as in the back side. I'll admit I'm not good at identifying what kind of greens I'm using here, but they are just from various types of evergreen conifers from the New England area. And some of them are in the wild, and some have been grown, where a friend of mine planted little seedlings of trees, and they just became bigger on her property. They're not natural, but they are hardy in our zone. And that's a goal of mine too, is I want to add more on my own property that I can cut from. So it's good to look for different types of conifers and evergreens. And a lot of times the big box stores will mark down their small decorative holiday conifers that they have in pots. And that's a good time to scoop some up and add for your property for next year. And the way I feel about these type of projects is there's really no right or wrong. Just use your judgment, be creative, and as long as you're happy with it and it looks nice, then there really is no messing up on a project like this. I know I have in one of my boxes in my basement a bunch of glass ornaments that I got from my mother-in-law's after she passed away. And for this year, I'm not going to use them. But I think next year that would look really pretty to use those in these containers. All right, so now I'm going to use some pine, which I have plenty of on my property, and I'm going to line those on the front as well as on the back. Now, what was really nice was with this pine, for example, my friend Linda said that it was hanging down over onto her property. And I imagine it made it difficult when she's gardening or when she's trying to mow her lawn. So she was very happy to cut out some of this for me to use. And I was very happy because the pieces of pine that I had on my property just didn't look as nice as these did. You definitely, when you're cutting off of trees on your own property, you don't want to make a big hole. You want to strategically take pieces off. Perhaps, again, pieces that are on the bottom that are laying on the ground that needed to be cut anyway. And if you do go foraging out in the woods, the big thing is you want to get permission. You don't want to just assume you can go anywhere and just forage. You want to make sure you get permission from the property owner or from your state. And I'm just trying to stick these the best that I can into the potting mix. And again, they will freeze within the next day or two. We've had some really cold weather here. And I know after this project, I am still going to have plenty of greens left. I can do more projects if I want to, Or I might share some of this material with my sister-in-law who lives close by, and she can use some and make some beautiful creations as well. I'd love to know if you've done this before. Have you ever created a container with greens? And if so, have you taken them off your property or someone else's? Definitely, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you and know if you've been creative this way. I will be the first to admit I am not very crafty. So this is definitely a little out of my comfort zone, but I was inspired to at least try it, and I'm glad I did. It really wasn't that hard. Okay, I think that's filled in very nicely. I have a nice layer of greens, and I want to add a little bit of different texture. And I did get some holly branches from my friend Linda, so I'm going to go ahead and add those next. A lot of the arrangements that I saw at the garden center had red twig dogwood or yellow twig dogwood, which I think looks very nice. And I do have some on my property, but they're not very big for cutting. And honestly, I just found these and I think they look equally as beautiful. They're just, like I said, at the bottom of a tree and they have a brownish red color to them. Now, holly is something that I have a very small piece of on my property that I bought from a backyard nursery, and I'm very thankful to get such beautiful holly to put into my arrangements. And I'm just looking them over. I'm trying to find some bigger pieces that I can put towards the front. Okay, and I'm basically decorating this so that the front of my window box is decorated very beautifully. And on the back side, there's still the green interest, but I'm not decorating it with anything special on the back side of it. You could do that if you wanted to. But in my case, I really just want to decorate it for one side, the side that I see the most. Now, Linda had teasel, which is very beautiful, and I've seen some people paint this different colors, like a red color, and the red looks really pretty next to the green. However, for this year, my theme with all of my containers is a more natural look. So I'm not going to paint this. With the teasel, you definitely want to be careful because they are prickly. And I'm wearing gloves for that reason, but I'm also wearing gloves because there's a lot of sap here. I love the structure and the color of the hydrangea. I think it looks very pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and add some dried hydrangea in here. Okay, the next thing I'm going to add are some grass seed pods on this side over here. The only thing with the grass seed pods, although they are pretty, is that by the end of winter, they might not be as beautiful as they are right now. But I'm okay with that. If they end up losing all of their plumes, I will just cut these way back down. But for right now, I think they're very pretty. And tall, different types of miscanthus are just so beautiful in the landscape, but their seed pods are equally as beautiful. And I've seen in different arrangements people using different seed pods. So in this case, you can see I'm using the seed pods of the miscanthus or grass, and I'm also using the seed pods of the teasel. But you can be creative and just look at your own property, and maybe you have a seed pod that would look pretty in one of your arrangements. On the front, I am noticing that I would like to have a little bit more of pine needles. So I'm going to add those. I don't know if it's pine needles, but it's from a pine tree. A few years ago at Home Depot, I bought a golden type of cypress. It's still quite small, but I couldn't help but take some of this off of there. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of that. Again, when you're making your pots, what you're looking for are layers, and you're looking for different types of structure and color. Okay, and now the finishing touches. I am going to go ahead and add these small little picks that I have to each side here. And they're just picks that I already had at my house from before. And I'm not even sure what they are, to be honest with you. They're just like, they were in a ring, and I took some wire, metal wire that I had, and I just strung it around these green, I'm not sure if they're chopsticks. I got them from my friend Raymond. Hi, Raymond. And I was going to use them as supports for my plants, but I thought it would be great to just put these little ornamental pieces on these sticks. So that's what I did. And what I like is it adds a nice like whitish color to this container. And this pot is all done. I think it looks beautiful. It is nice and full. And when I bring it outside, if I notice something is out of place, I can still tweak it. But for right now, I think it's good. Let's go ahead and put together the last pot that I have. I already had these bows at home, so I just opened them up, fluffed them a little bit, and I tied them around the back here, but then I added some tape just to hold them up. So it works. It is all good. We're going to start again in the center of the pot for the height. So I had a different type of tree that had these branches that were like a tan color. And so we're going to add those in here. I'm trying to put them at a slight angle. And I actually really liked the branches that then branch out. They're not just a single branch coming up. I thought that added a lot of interest to the pots. So I have some tan colored sticks and some reddish brown colored sticks. You want to make sure you're sticking everything in deep enough so that it can hold into the soil. I have a number of birch trees on my property, and as much as I love them, they do end up falling down. I have a lot that have died over the years, but they definitely add interest and height to these pots. They will definitely benefit from when this pot freezes. You can see these pieces are quite large. I'm just trying to cut off pieces and use them as I go. I think foraging for your own greens and even building your pots can be a really fun project to do by yourself or as a family tradition or with friends every year. Okay, so now I've added this layer of greens, I want to go ahead and add a different layer just to add some interest. Sometimes with your greens, you might have some pieces that don't look so good. You can definitely just cut them off. And also, when you buy a Christmas tree, you can also cut off pieces from there, because many times the Christmas tree is too big anyway to fit into wherever it is that you live. So it's always nice to cut from that. And Christmas trees can be relatively cheap. So you can always buy a Christmas tree and cut it up and use the greens off of it. I may make a swag for my door. I do have holiday wreaths that came from my mother-in-law's, but because I have so much green material, it might be fun to make a swag. And it actually looks pretty easy to make. I was looking at it at the nursery today, and I thought to myself, I could do that, even if I'm not that crafty. And again, as you're adding your layers, you want to make sure that they're also coming out at a little bit of an angle, just to add that interest. I try to, whenever possible, use as much of my greens up. I really don't want to waste them. So even if I have a small little random piece, I'm sure I could stick it in somewhere. It's always good to step back and look and see what else needs to be done. Hey, I think that looks good. So what I'm going to do now is add the hydrangea. And now we're going to add for additional height in the center here, the plumes from the grass. I always like to cut everything on the taller side, because then I can make it shorter when I'm ready to use it. And now we're going to add, just in this section over here, the teasel seed pods. I have a lot going on in here. The next thing we're going to add is just a little bit of holly. I have a big piece here. I'm trying to see how to cut it. And as much as I want this pot to look similar to the other pot, the reality is it's not going to be 100% the same. I'm okay with that. I know it's hard to focus just on this because we have so much going on around it, but once I bring it outside, I definitely will show you what everything's looking like. I like to use fake berries for my arrangements. However, I am going to upgrade and buy some nicer ones next year. These are styrofoam, and I've heard that the plastic ones just last better. And my goal is to be able to reuse whatever I put inside of these pots, things like these berries. I want to reuse them year after year. So for right now, though, we're going to use what we have. You can definitely take berries from the wild, but I prefer to leave them for the birds. But I also won't judge anyone if they want to use it in their arrangements. I think they're very beautiful. The last thing that we have to add is a pine cone. So what I have here is copper wire. That's what I could find in my barn. I know somewhere I have a green colored wire. I think it's called floral wire. I couldn't find it, so I just used what I could find. And I'm just using my regular garden snips. And just some pine cones from the yard that I spray painted. I had some white spray paint, so I spray painted those. And I think next year it might look pretty to add some glitter, just to add some sparkle. I definitely want to have some sparkle on my containers and my pots for next year. But this year, the theme is more of a natural look. Of course, I spray painted the pine cones, so they're not as natural, but they are real. They were collected from the yard. And that pot is complete. Let me go ahead and get them placed outside, and I will show you what they all look like. So a few more things that you want to do when you make containers like these. You want to make sure you give them a great drink of water. And the reason is all of this greenery needs the water. It's like a Christmas tree. So you want to make sure that you're watering your pots. Here where I live, we are literally going to have a freeze tonight. We've had freezes almost every night for the last week. So I'm going to go ahead and water this just to show you that you want to do that. However, the soil was already wet, and once this freezes, I don't have to water it anymore. And what's nice is once this does freeze, it will just really hold everything in place for me. The next thing is, this is not mandatory, this is optional. If you want to buy a product called Wilt Stop, that's really good for preserving the life of a lot of your greens. So you can usually buy it either in a bottle like this or in concentrate form that you need to then mix with water. So I'm just going to coat everything here with the Wilt Stop. And that's it. I really hope that this video got you in the holiday spirit, and I also hope that it inspired you to maybe get out there and create your own beautiful pot. Start small. Start with one small little pot. And some of these pots you can even bring in for a holiday decoration. Maybe you have some company coming over and it would look really pretty in your house. So try to be creative when it comes to creating a winter arrangement or a winter pot. I think it's so much fun, and I'm really looking forward to making more of these in the future. I hope you're still able to get out in your garden, even if it's just picking up leaves. Until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.